Hi, my name is Karina Gutierrez, and I am the Agency and Community Initiatives Manager here at WasteNot, so I'll be your point of contact for anything MealConnect related. I'm so excited to be able to get to know you, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to not only do this training, but to be a part of our organization. We really couldn't have this initiative without you all. So today we'll be going more into depth about who we are, what we do, how to utilize the MealConnect system, as well as some of our general requirements and guidelines for your safety and for our volunteers. Then we'll go more into depth about food safety specifically and go over what our next steps are. I know that you all have already been exposed to some of this through the videos, but we just need to go more in depth about it all. So here at WasteNow, we are dedicated to creating sustainable food systems that help people and the planet flourish. This has been the case since we were founded back in 1987. Back then, words like sustainability, food rescue, food waste, landfill reduction, none of this was a part of national conversation like they are now. And WasteNow was actually the second organization of its kind to be dedicated to food rescue. Today, we have been able to divert more than 100 million meals. And in 2021 alone, we were able to divert 3.5 million meals. And here are just some of the agencies that we've been able to divert that food to. We do currently serve 85 different agencies, and some of them do have multiple locations, like Native American Connections. They do receive food at multiple locations for both MealConnect and our grocery rescue program. So with our grocery rescue program, we have professional drivers drive the refrigerated trucks. They pick up food from our food donors, some of which are retail stores, and they'll go ahead and it's food that they would no longer be able to sell, but it's still good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just technically past best sell by day. And so then they distribute it out to our partnering agencies, and they get the food same day. Compare that with the MealConnect program, which is for more like restaurants, vendors, hotels, like the Waldorf Astoria, where they just have a surplus, where they have too much. They weren't able to sell it all, so they don't want to throw it away. And so you'll see them post online. Urban Cookies posts a lot, as does Arcadia Farm, Sante, Crumble has been a recent addition. And so yeah, you're the ones who come in whenever they're the really sporadic of a, hey, I'm going to have 30 pounds of cookies in 2 days. So then you'll go ahead and just schedule that out. But here is another example of how MealConnect has been able to be used before. Panera decided they wanted to give back to the community during 2020, during the pandemic. And so they decided to partner with the Boys and Girls Club and give all of their students meals. And that included the sandwich, the chips, the drink, the cookie, everything that you would normally get when you bought is what they gave. And it's really special to be able to give children, give our clients these experiences, because they're people who normally wouldn't be able to afford this type of meal. And to be able to give that back and be able to present it in a way that is full of dignity, it's just really important. It's just really impactful. And every time you all make a delivery, you help that type of thing happen. But in order to do that, you do need to wait until you get a text message. You'll be able to accept it, see when exactly it is, and schedule it out. Then you'll go pick up the food. You will get a reminder text an hour beforehand. And make sure that you use the website's GPS to navigate to the donor as well as to the agency. Because again, some like Crumble cookies, there are like 3 or 4 that come to mind in terms of locations. Native American Connections, we have one out in Apache Junction and another in Glendale. So we really want to make sure we're going to the right one. So always just use the app's direction. Don't go ahead and plug it into your own GPS. But when you go to pick up the food, make sure that you temp it. Try and go for the middle of the box, as they showed in the video, and in between layers of food, because we want to make sure that it's as accurate as possible. And if the food's been outside for any period of time, it's with it being Arizona and so hot, it's automatically going to raise it, especially if you do the outer layer. So always in the middle. Um, then you'll go ahead and you'll deliver the food. And again, same thing, be sure that you temp it before giving it out. And when you have it in the car, make sure that you don't do any unscheduled stops, just so that way we make sure that the food's getting there as cold as possible. But you also put the temperature blanket on top of it, so that way it helps maintain that. But this is what you'll actually be seeing. Number one shows you the text message where it'll say where you'll be giving it to, when it'll be happening, as well as a link to be able to accept or decline it. Just so you all know, the app really isn't designed for volunteers. It's mainly designed for the agencies and for the food donors. So in order to be able to see the donation, you'll need to follow the link each time. But it should tell you all the information you need, where it'll show you the poundage, where it's coming from, where you're going to. It'll always be within that 10-mile radius. And it'll give any extra notes about where exactly you're picking up, if it's like a loading dock in the back, if they want you to enter through the front building, a side door, anything like that. And definitely be sure to select what time exactly you'll be picking it up, because they'll frequently just put it in, we want the food picked up from 7 to 10, for example, or 1 to 4. But if you put in, oh, I plan to be there at like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, it helps give the donor a better point of reference as to when exactly to have the food ready. But as I had mentioned before, be sure to look at what type of food it is and how heavy it is. This is a very physically demanding volunteer position, so we just want to make sure that you're taking care of yourselves and aren't pushing yourselves more than what you can do. So definitely just go ahead and if you realize that you can't actually accept it, or if you accept it and realize on second thought, I can't do this, or even if you get there and realize that the food isn't actually good and you can't accept it because it's been out too long or the temp is too high, anything like that, just give me a call and I'll cancel it or I'll change it on the back end. We don't ever want you all to click cancel because that doesn't actually notify me. And I need to actually do it on the back end, and because I can then find a volunteer who can pick it up if you can't, or I can call the agency so that way they know not to expect the delivery anymore, anything like that. So definitely just let me know. I'm here to help. And once you make the delivery, you'll be able to say that you have both picked it up and that you've dropped it off, and then you'll see that the task is complete. And if for whatever reason that doesn't happen, I'll probably reach out to you just to make sure that nothing's wrong. But in order to do that, you will need to complete your profile. You should have the link already. If for whatever reason you don't, just let me know and I'll send it to you again. But it's really important that you fill everything out on your profile, because that's how you can, that's how we make the connections. We try to keep things relatively close by to you. And that address that you enter can either be the work address that you're coming from or your home address, wherever makes most sense for you. But that way we can just make sure that we're not sending you things out in Apache Junction, for example, if you're out in Glendale. And we want it to be reasonable for you all as well. But we do keep the agency and the donor within a 10-mile radius from each other. So that also is done to help things out on your end. But afterwards, you'll log into the system using the MealConnect.org website. And that's when you'll actually be able to change your settings and go into it and change your availability. That can be done at any point in time. You can change that as much as you want. Our volunteers who are nurses really enjoy this feature, because on weeks that they work, they can just select their availability to 0, but on weeks that they don't work, they can then go ahead and change it. So definitely feel free to change that as much as you need to, as much as is helpful for you. From there, here are just some our general guidelines that you have to keep in mind. We don't allow any children to go back into areas that aren't available to the public. This is especially important for the food donors because the kitchens can be really dangerous places. And we also want to make sure that we're practicing food safety and abiding by those regulations as much as possible. So we don't want to bring any children in there just because it's really not safe for them. And as I mentioned, if you go and realize, hey, they had put down that it was a 50-pound donation, but in reality, it's closer to 150, just let me know and we can find someone else to do that. But always remain professional because you do represent us whenever you make a delivery or whenever you pick up food. We want to make sure that we are treating our agencies and our donors with the highest level of compassion as well as dignity. And we do also require that you don't take any food for personal use. And we do have a heavy receipting process to just confirm this. But this is really just important because of the professionalism. If you do need food, just let us know. We can help get you connected with different food resources in the area, or we can also recommend that you call 211. They're a free confidential service and they can help you figure out what food resources are near you. But as an agency, we need to make sure that we're fulfilling our promise, and we promise a certain amount of food. So we want to make sure that we give all of that. And if at any point you realize you can't continue being a volunteer, if you're going to move out of the area, anything like that, just let us know. That's completely fine. Life happens, things change. And just, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Just let me know and we can schedule a time to meet up and you can drop the stuff off. We don't want you to just hold on to the things because then we're going to have to eventually replace them. And that's money that we're spending on replacing expensive items when we could be utilizing that to be bettering our services and to just be increasing the amount of meals that we're actually providing our clients. But just keep that in mind. But as we already mentioned with the personal safety, make sure that you're wearing any clothes that you feel comfortable moving around in. That includes closed-toed shoes since you will be moving into like food donors, and that's just a part of the requirements. And we do require that you wear your volunteer badge on you, just so that way people know who you are and who you're with. It helps to avoid any of that confusion. Regarding your vehicle, you must be able to drive. We again ties back into that professionalism and the fact that you represent us. We don't want there to be a headline of like, oh, waste not volunteer illegally driving. So definitely just abide by all of the laws with that. And with that, it's also important to make sure that you're keeping the vehicle clean. So that way there isn't any risk of debris getting into food. There isn't any risk of food contamination, anything like that. We also don't allow any smoking because the food can absorb that smell and not everyone will appreciate that. And with animals, they all have dander, so we don't want of any of that dander to go into the food. And you never know who might be allergic to it. So not only is it a safety concern from the food getting contaminated, but it could also trigger something stronger. So we do request those things. But moving more into the temperature and to the food safety, you will be given the temperature logs that, again, you'll have to fill out what temperature the food is at when you pick it up and drop it off, and then hand that sheet over to the agency. You'll have the thermal blanket to be able to cover the food, the temperature gun, the clipboard, and you'll need to print off the temperature logs after the first one. And you'll always have to carry your badge. Keep in mind that we need to avoid any cross-contamination, make sure that everything's properly sealed, and anything that has raw food has to go on the bottom layer, whereas anything that's already prepared should be on the very top. That just helps to minimize any risk of cross-contamination with bacteria. Another thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to give a temperature log for any produce, bakery items, or shelf-stable items. So if that's the only thing that you're giving, you don't need to bother temping it, because all of that is fine to give at room temperature. But if it is anything that's already been cut or prepared, then it does need to be already at 41 degrees or below. And this is just done out of an abundance of caution. The Good Samaritan Food Donation Act actually protects donors from liability, so that includes both our donors and ourselves. But we just want to make sure that we aren't risking the health of our clients. So that's why we're very strict about it being a very small distance that you'll be driving, and we don't allow any unscheduled stops. But now that you have gone through and completed this training, you'll need to go ahead and complete your waiver, the profile, and the quiz. This is just to make sure that you understood everything and everything's completely up to date. And once all of this has been completed, you can go ahead and schedule a meeting with me. That way you can pick up the different materials that I listed out, and you'll be ready to start receiving text messages and picking up food and making deliveries. We do recommend that you follow us on social media, just because it helps to keep you all aware of if we're ever closed for holidays, things like that. But also the Facebook group, we do have that specifically for our volunteers, because this volunteer opportunity is so remote. It's very hard for you all to connect otherwise. So that's just a good way to help build community. But these are our social media handles, and here's my contact information. So definitely feel free to reach out with whenever you have any questions or concerns. But I am so glad that you all are here, and thank you so much. I hope you have a great day.